Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Achieving Layered Protection for Cloud Applications and APIs. My name is Jeremy Schwartz, and I will be your host for today's presentation. Our featured speakers for today are Brad Casemore, Vice President of Research, Data Center and Multi-Cloud Networks at IDC, and Darshant Bhagat, Senior Director, Product Management, App and API Security at Citrix. Before we get started, let me cover a couple of housekeeping details. We will have a dedicated question and answer session at the end of today's presentation and invite you to submit your questions at any time during the presentation using the Ask a Question window in the webinar interface. Also, this event is being recorded and a link to the on-demand version will be sent to everyone in a follow-up email. With that, I'll now hand it over to Brad to start the presentation. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Yes, I am Brad Casemore and I'm VP Research for Data Center and Multi-Cloud Networks at IDC. And today, I will be talking to you about how you can achieve layered protection for cloud applications and APIs. Now, before we get into how you can do that, let's set the context. Today, of course, we've seen growing adoption of cloud by organizations worldwide. Cloud in its early days started relatively simply, where developers were directly taking applications to the cloud. But from there, of course, it has grown. We've had a greater number of applications and use cases addressed by cloud, and we've also had an adoption of cloud operating models and cloud technologies throughout the enterprise. So cloud has really had a reverberative effect across enterprises, not just in terms of workload placement, although we've seen plenty of that, both IaaS and SaaS, but also in terms of how we do things. Cloud has had a significant impact on operating models and on the various technologies we use, from development environments and frameworks to tooling and so forth. And today, we see a definite adoption of hybrid IT and multi-cloud across the enterprise landscape, irrespective of vertical market or where you are in the world. It is a worldwide phenomenon and it is picking up pace. We're seeing a greater number of use cases for cloud applications, and we're seeing an evolution in cloud architectures. Of course, we had VMs in clouds, we now have containers in clouds, and we're moving toward function as a service and serverless going forward. We have cloud environments that are, of course, large public cloud data centers. We have edge cloud. We have a really distributed application environment that's occurring across this cloud landscape. And as these applications become more critical to businesses, and there's no question that their value is increasing all the time, it really does require a different sort of approach to protecting those applications and the APIs that support them. And this is what we'll be talking to you about today. And it's interesting because cloud adoption in the early days, off to the left of the image you're seeing right now, was driven primarily by perceived cost and also agility. And those are still valid, right, as drivers for cloud adoption. But what we are seeing today amid the current pandemic, and of course it's the elephant in the room, we can never quite ignore it, is now there's a third leg in the stool, a third reason to adopt cloud. And that is for business resilience and continuity. And we're seeing as a result of that at IDC in our research, even a greater adoption of hybrid IT and multi-cloud. And of course, you need the right protection profile to defend those applications in that context. And I mentioned the pandemic, and I mentioned how it's changing what we're doing. Let me talk to you a bit about some of the research that we've seen over the last few months. And we asked our respondent, our customers, these are worldwide enterprises, how they would be investing in a post-COVID world as they looked to come out of the other side of this crisis. And all the things you're seeing on this slide right now were mentioned prominently. There's no question that they received, all of them, I think, received significant responses. When you get more than 40% providing an affirmative answer for something on any survey we find at IDC, it is significant. And what we found is that they're definitely focusing on increased reliance on basically advanced automation across this environment. And that's automation in terms of networking, in terms of network security, in terms of a lot of other things. And of course, multi-cloud is driving all of these changes. they're also looking at an increased ability to ensure that users have secure access to these applications across this distributed environment. And they're thinking about this in a very holistic and comprehensive fashion in terms of the protection you need across this multi-cloud landscape. And they're also looking at how they can remotely manage these environments. Automation is another thing that's been driven as a result of the crisis. And now organizations are thinking about that in the same way as they think about multi-cloud as a means of achieving this sort of next generation or modern resilience. And, you can see the others here, but the important takeaway here is that, multi-cloud is becoming absolutely integral to enterprises worldwide. And they're looking at not only how they can provide a simpler management environment and a more automated environment for it, but also how they can increase the protection profile for these multi-cloud applications. And as they think about this, and they think about it in a really practical way, they are looking for a right balance in terms of their modern application challenges. They want to balance agility, which is, of course, endemic to cloud, right? It's a defining characteristic of cloud. We adopt cloud for agility. We adopt it for more flexibility. We adopt it for the perceived cost reasons, and we adopt it for the business resilience I talked about it. But they're also looking to figure out how they can do this in a way that isn't fragmented, that isn't unruly, that doesn't confer a measure of control. And that's a real challenge, because as our application environment becomes increasingly distributed across clouds, across IaaS, across SaaS, across legacy data centers, your traditional on-premises data center, as well as new edge environments in the data center, and then you've got the distributed environments and various other edge environments. How can you maintain a consistent posture that allows you to have the control and management that IT operations craves? And this is especially true in the context of workload and application protection. Now, we know this is absolutely necessary because we know the application in this modern cloud world is more important than ever. When you think about the way applications have evolved in the cloud era, applications, of course, were always used, at least in the client-server era, for back office applications supporting the business. But now applications are at the forefront of how we do business. They're where transactions occur, where user engagements take place. That's why we talk about digital experience. Applications have gained a primacy that they didn't have in the client-server world. And this is why you really have to think about your protection profile and your protection stance for these applications. They've also become more complex. Think about the move to microservices, the move to containers and microservices, these sort of loosely coupled application components that can be brought together in different ways to speed the application development cycle and to also improve the experience that you offer users, whether they be employees or clients, customers, or partners, or whatever. And they've also become, as we said earlier, more distributed across this landscape. They're spread around, so are your users, right? Your users are also distributed across this landscape, and especially now, amid the pandemic, you have a lot more work from home access. And you have to think about how these applications and APIs can be fully protected from the threats and vulnerabilities that can occur across this whole landscape. Now, what are some of these increased risks to applications and APIs? Well, workload migration to cloud introduces an increased attack surface because obviously this is more distributed, right? You're going across this whole cloud landscape. And that results not only from the distributed nature of the cloud applications, which we've talked about, but also from the mobility of the users. And we've talked about that as well. You have more work from home. You have people in coffee shops. You have people in branch offices, remote sites, and everywhere in between. You also have increased application complexity, which results from increased nature of these business critical applications. These are all API driven, of course. We have things like API gateways, and we're moving to ingress controllers in a cloud native world. And these apps are invested with richer features and greater functionality. They're built on new architectures, as we said earlier, these cloud native application principles and designs. And, the containers and microservices are changing the world. In fact, an interesting tidbit I can offer you here from our research is that our application researchers predict that in the next 5 years, as a result of the proliferation of cloud native applications, we will see more business applications come into the world than were created in the previous 30 years. So think about that. You've got not only this incredibly diffuse landscape, but you have a greater number of complex applications that are coming into being and will continue to come into being for the next several years. And in conjunction with that, we also have the growing sophistication of cyber threats, which are moving up the stack to exploit application layer vulnerabilities, because more and more of certainly the networking and network security that matters will occur at the application layer. That's really where the richest payloads are, and the attackers know that. And the attackers are using a widely available democratized attack kits, right? These are proliferating. They're almost like cookie cutter attack kits, but they can be customized in various ways. And they're operating in a highly disciplined and professional manner, which is different from the previous generation of attackers, the script kiddies and some of the others who were almost hobbyist in terms of their hacking exploits and so forth. So this is a more disciplined world of threats than we've ever faced before. This really occasions a need for a more layered approach to protections. I think that's understandable in terms of the foregoing part of this presentation. Application availability, we talked about the importance of these applications, but this availability increasingly determines whether revenue and profits will be made for your organization, and whether they'll be lost, or whether you'll see reputational harm done to your organization as a result of an exploit or an attack or a vulnerability that leaves critical information, often sensitive information, exposed. Many organizations have today a very fragmented and piecemeal approach, different tools spread across the organization, spread across silos in the organization in many cases. And sometimes they're antiquated in terms of their abilities. They weren't really designed for this cloud world that we've moved into, for the cloud era, and certainly not for a cloud native world. And this has really compromised their ability to deliver this comprehensive or layered workload protection. You have fragmentation not only in terms of number of tools, but also fragmentation in terms of operational ownership and RBAC and other capabilities. And that means you're unable to move with the speed of the business while maintaining control, that theme I talked about earlier, where you not only want to be able to support agility, you don't want to be able to say to your organization, no, you can't do that, because the risk profile is too high. What you want to be able to do is say, yes, we can move at speed. We can adopt cloud technologies, and we can pursue a cloud application strategy across this multi-cloud landscape. And we can do it with a measure of control that allows us to have comfort in the integrity of those applications. And that's really what everybody is striving for. Now let's look at some of the key requirements you need to put in place in order to achieve this layered and comprehensive protection posture. You need to look at it, as I said, in a comprehensive manner in terms of your protection, with centralized management and a holistic security posture, and the ability to simply and effectively deploy the right tools in minutes. Speed is very important, as we talked about earlier. One of the reasons we go to cloud is agility, and you need to be able to move quickly. And you also want to provide this application protection across this multi-cloud landscape that we talked about earlier, defending against common and known attacks, as well as those that are uncommon and unknown, zero-day attacks that are proliferating all the time as a result of the increased professionalism and sophistication of the attackers. You want to be able to provide continuous protection from anything that could strain your infrastructure, or a lot worse, take down applications or exploit them for fraudulent purposes or pernicious purposes that could do significant brand damage to your organization. You want this to be simple to deploy and manage. It's not good enough to move at speed if we're running into a wall. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to move at speed. We want to be able to support cloud-centric models. And cloud, of course, is all about agility, but we want to be able to do it in a way that confers control. And we don't want to have a compromise between speed and control. So you want to be able to to support the cloud elastic scalability. You want to be able to achieve consistent protection across this landscape. And you want to be able to support continuous compliance and governance. Now that needs to be, as I said, consistent across this landscape. You don't want to do it in a piecemeal fashion. You want to do it in a fashion that extends across the application landscape, across your hybrid IT environment. And you want to be able to look at cloud delivered and cloud managed mechanisms to do this, because that's obviously cloud friendly, it's cloud centric, it's very much a piece and aligned with a cloud model that your organization is pursuing. And that can help you mitigate complexity and bring simplicity to application protection, as I said, with no compromise. You're not compromising speed or control. You're able to accommodate both. Now, what are some of the benefits of a layered approach? Well, we've referred to some of them earlier, but clearly layered protection provides a deeper, multifaceted defense across all of your applications, irrespective of where they're deployed and where they may be accessed. Protection should span all application architectures, types, and locations, from your on-premises environment, where you may have more of a traditional monolithic approach today, to the cloud, where you have VM instances, and you also are moving toward more cloud-native architectures with containers and microservices. And ideally, you may be trying to achieve that posture between your on-premises environments and your clouds with things like Kubernetes. And you want to be able to have fast and effective protection that scales as required. As I said earlier, it has to be very cloud-like in its elastic scale. And you want it to be simple, transparent, and predictable in terms of the consumption model. Again, very much like the cloud, where you are looking at paying via consumption, you're looking at your elastic consumption, you're looking at a subscription model for this service, and also the cloud delivered aspect that I talked about earlier. And you want it to be able to achieve effective multi-cloud compliance and governance across this hybrid landscape. It's very important that you not have to go from, console to console and tool to tool across fragmented operations where, one hand doesn't know what the other is doing, and you've got a very fragmented tool base that you're working with. It's important that you're able to provide compliance across all of these environments. And with that, I now want to pass you over to Darshant for the next stage of today's webinar. Darshant?
Thank you so much, Brad, for the great overview on the challenges customers face today to meet their app and API security needs in a multi-cloud world. Citrix offers a comprehensive suite of app security solutions in order to meet the challenges of today's multi-cloud deployments. Citrix offers a full-featured app security stack, including web application firewall, bot management, layer 7 DDoS, as well as advanced API security. These solutions provide choice and flexibility to address the needs of your cloud journey for both monolithic and microservices architectures, leveraging Kubernetes and containers. Citrix ADC customers can leverage their existing deployments for app security functions managed through a centralized control and monitoring plane called Application Delivery Manager, ADM. ADM is available as a SaaS service and helps achieve consistent policies and centralized analytics across on-prem and cloud deployments. By deploying app security on your Citrix ADC, you can leverage the benefits of a single pass architecture with reduced latency and lower TCO. Thousands of Citrix customers today leverage this option to secure their multi-cloud applications and APIs, in front of both monolithic as well as new cloud-native deployments as deployed as Citrix Ingress Gateway. The same protections, the same proven protections can now be consumed in a simple cloud-delivered app security service called Citrix Web App and API Protection Service, Cbap. Cbap allows you to quickly secure your applications and APIs, reduce operational overhead, achieve continuous protections, and increase agility without the need of deploying anything in your network. Citrix Web App and API Protection offers holistic, proven, and layered protection for all your web apps and APIs. Starting with volumetric DDoS to a comprehensive WAF and bot management solution that is coming soon, you can meet all of your application security requirements through Cbap. With industry-leading 12 terabits per second of scrubbing capacity, Cbap can help thwart some of the largest DDoS attacks possible to your infrastructure and your applications, no matter where they are deployed. With a full-featured WAF, including OWASP top 10 protections, signatures, granular rewrite and responder policies, and our proven application learning-based positive security model, you can achieve the desired security posture for all your apps and APIs in your multi-cloud deployments. Citrix already offers a robust bot mitigation capability, including device fingerprinting, signatures, mobile SDK, as well as AI ML-based detections of attacks such as credential stuffing and content scraping as part of the Citrix ADC offering, managed through the centralized Citrix Application Delivery Manager ADM. And this bot mitigation capability will soon be available in Cbap as an optional add-on. Now, let's take a look at how Cbap works. Cbap can be turned on for your app or APIs with a simple DNS change or with a BGP routing change. Traffic from the service can be sent to your origin servers over private GRE tunnels. With these changes, all traffic for your applications and APIs will first pass through the Cbap network. So attack traffic, including large DDoS traffic, is scrubbed at the edge without it impacting the WAN pipe or your application deployment in a multi-cloud environment. In addition, you can manage Cbap through a detailed analytics and configuration portal that's offered as a SaaS offering. Though not required, if you're interested in a layered protection approach, you can additionally choose to leverage your ADCs deployed near the apps to further apply granular protections as needed by leveraging your Citrix ADC premium license. In summary, Citrix offers a comprehensive and holistic set of security functions for your apps and APIs, whether deployed on-prem, near app, in cloud, or consumed as a complete cloud security service. Citrix Cloud Security Service, Citrix App and API Protection, Cbap, offers you a holistic and proven app security platform with a full-featured WAF and DDoS that's available today, and bot management, which is coming soon. It allows you to protect any application across on-prem and public cloud with easy onboarding and simple security controls that can be applied quickly. With easy-to-use policy interface and automated SOC offering, you can rest assured that your applications and APIs are protected no matter what. With Cbap, there are no surprises with simple and predictable consumption model and simplified metering based on throughput and number of applications. All in all, Citrix App and API Protection Service is a comprehensive solution to meet your app and API security needs in a quick, simple, and predictable manner. Thank you. With that, let me pass over to Brad for the conclusion.
Thank you, Darshan. Now, before we leave you today, I want to just impart some words of guidance from IDC, and there are three main points of guidance that I want to leave you with. Number one, and we said this earlier, applications have gained unprecedented value in the context of digital transformation. They are the lifeblood and the face of digital business. And I think it's become even more the point during the crisis, and it will be certainly in evidence as we move past this crisis. As a result, ensuring that applications and APIs are fully protected from threats and vulnerabilities should be a priority for any enterprise that uses applications for engagement and productivity. And I'm sure that really applies to all of you out there in the audience today. Two, several factors threaten the integrity and availability of applications and APIs. And a fragmented approach to addressing that protection introduces functional gaps and greater complexity. And complexity is the enemy of agility. As I said earlier, we still want to move fast, but we want to do it with control. And then number three, a comprehensive and layered solution, which should include WAF, defenses against volumetric DDoS attacks, and bot management, can help to keep critically important applications and services available and safe for your employees, for your customers, and for other stakeholders across this distributed multi-cloud environment. And now I believe we're going to go to Q&A, so I will pass it back and we'll move to the next stage of the webinar.
Thank you, Brad and Darshan. I think that this conversation is critically important and the importance cannot be understated. Now, as we move into Q&A, I'd like to remind our audience that if you have a question, please submit it in the Ask a Question area on your screen. Simply type the question into your text box and then hit submit. We have a few that have come in already and we'll get started. This first one is for you, Brad. How should one balance between the pros and cons of multiple point solutions versus a one-stop shop for app security from the cloud?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a challenge that many enterprises face. I think from our perspective, you really need to do an audit of the tools you have today, of the protection that you have in place. And you may have a fragmented approach. You may have many tools. In fact, that's, as I said earlier, that's what many enterprises have today. And you have to look at whether they're fit for purpose across that landscape. Really look at them and say, do they meet my needs today? And will they meet my needs as my application environment evolves, as my application landscape evolves? And I think that way you can look at it from the perspective of not only do they meet my needs, but can I manage them effectively across this landscape? And if that's not the case, then you should look to consolidate. Now, as you look to consolidate, you want to make sure that all the functionality and layered protection you need is there. But certainly, I think in the case of most enterprises, and we do anticipate this from here at IDC, we do anticipate that many organizations will go through a consolidation, and they will look to, as they continue on their cloud journey, they will look to cut down on the number of tools and to reduce the fragmentation so that they can do things more effectively in a layered and comprehensive way. So I do think you will see more organizations move to not necessarily a one-stop shop, because it's very hard to get everything you need from one place, but they will look at reducing the fragmentation and complexity of their toolkits for application and API protection.
That's a great answer. It's not at all in one situation. Darshan, the next question is for you. Does the Citrix web app firewall provide defense for both on-prem and cloud workloads?
Thanks, Jeremy. And yes, absolutely. Right. Citrix WAF, whether consumed as part of Citrix ADC or as part of the Cbap service, in both those scenarios, Citrix WAF offers comprehensive protection for both on-prem and cloud workloads.
That's fantastic. And I think, Brad, this next one, really helps to speak to that. You mentioned that cyber attacks are moving up the stack to exploit application layer vulnerabilities. Are there unique requirements for protecting apps in multi-cloud environments?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they will, these will become only more pronounced as we see greater adoption of cloud native application environments comprising containers and microservices. This is absolutely an issue because you're talking about a distributed environment. You're talking about an environment that is very diffuse across all these workloads and instances and apps, and increasingly, of course, these are web apps, right? These are HTTP apps, HTTPS apps, and of course the attackers out there who are increasingly sophisticated realize that. So you need to really look at, from an enterprise IT perspective, from a security perspective, and from a CIO perspective, you really need to give thought to your exposure across this distributed landscape as you move to a greater number of engagement apps that are out in the cloud. And they're as I said earlier, you're leveraging IaaS a lot more. You're moving to cloud native, both on-prem and in the cloud. And these apps are growing in number and they're growing in complexity. So you want to make sure that there are no vulnerabilities, or at least the absolute minimum. You want to do everything you can to mitigate any threats or exposures. And you want to do it across this whole landscape. You want to do it with consistency and control. But yes, that's where things are. We talked earlier, these are applications of engagement. These are web apps. These are modern cloud apps. And the bad guys know it just as we know it.
Thanks, Brad. That's a great answer. And I think this next question for Darshan goes a little deeper on that. Assuming the number of attacks that Brad just talked about, how long does it take for a customer to get protected against DDoS and application layer attacks?
Thank you, Jeremy. And that's a great question, right? That's one of the things that most customers kind of think about is the complexity and how quickly and easily can these protections be turned on. And the fact of the matter is it's extremely simple and extremely quick to get protected against DDoS and application layer attacks. It sometimes is as simple as changing a DNS record. And for DDoS, our SOC, our 24/7 SOC, is always on the lookout and can turn on mitigation. It isn't always on DDoS protection and can turn on mitigation any moment required.
Fantastic. I'm sure that comes as a relief to several people. There's another one here, about the same type of attack for you, Darshan. In addition to the volumetric DDoS attacks, can Citrix also detect and stop the smaller API-focused DDoS attacks that ISPs often fail to detect?
Yes, absolutely. Right. Citrix has mitigation capabilities in both volumetric DDoS attacks, whether they're layer 3 or layer 4, but we specifically can decrypt the traffic and look at smaller API-focused threats like HTTP slow loaders or HTTP slow post, and other things that are typically done with on APIs or even at the application layer. So, in summary, yes, absolutely, we can protect all kinds of DDoS attacks, not just volumetric DDoS attacks.
That's terrific. And one more related to that, how is latency affected with all that traffic passing through the Citrix web app and API protection service before being sent to the application?
Okay, great. Again, great question. So in the context of Citrix web application API protection, we have a global network of more than 14 POPs. And so from a latency standpoint, it's minimal in terms of added latency with traffic passing by, no matter where your applications are located or where your customers are located. We have the right POP near the app, near the customer to optimize that latency and minimize any impact on customer experience.
Excellent, excellent. And I think we have one more question, one time for one more question for you, Brad. What is a best practices approach to ensure that compliance standards are met in public cloud as well as in the data center?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are different different compliance requirements across industries. As we all know, there are different requirements in many companies that go beyond standard industry compliance requirements. And I think the important thing is to really look at your application, your base of applications, your application mix, and how it will evolve over time, what you'll have on premises and the nature of those applications, what you'll have in the cloud, what you'll have across clouds, as you evolve and you look to adapt or you look to adopt various clouds. And we are seeing that. What we find is that organizations really want to be able to leverage, to look at their applications and then determine where should this optimally reside. And you don't want to be constrained by any sort of artificial impediment or barrier, right? Any sort of inhibition that is unnatural. And I think as you look at your compliance structure, look to have a protection framework that can enable you to maintain compliance wherever you believe that application can be optimally placed or should be optimally placed. And I think it's important to look for tools and frameworks that can give you that, can give you that consistency and control across that distributed environment, across that multi-cloud environment. And that should be a consideration right from the outset, right? Not only do I have the right tools, but do I have the right tools that can enable me to maintain compliance across a distributed multi-cloud landscape? And it is a consideration, I think, that organizations who, many of them, of course, face compliance measures and restrictions, they should give careful thought to that at the outset.
Fantastic. Well, we've reached the time. I want to thank both Darshant and Brad for an amazingly informative presentation. I think, again, as I said, critically important in today's day and world. And I want to thank our audience for joining us. A quick reminder, you can check out and register for upcoming webinars and events by going to citrix.com/events. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in the future. We hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining us.